Ancient Rome is considered one of the most powerful and influential empires in history. Its achievements in architecture, engineering, law, culture, and military are still studied and admired today. But just like any other civilization, ancient Romans had their own share of dirty little secrets. And today we're going to dive into one of the most scandalous rumors about them: the shocking secret parties hosted by the empresses and elite women of ancient Rome. These parties were said to have pushed the boundaries of morality and debauchery, but how much truth is there to these rumors? Join us as we explore the salacious details of these secret parties and separate fact from fiction. As the wife of the Roman Emperor Nero, Poppaea Sabina had access to the greatest wealth and power that Rome had to offer. But despite her privileged position, she was known for her wild and scandalous behavior. Rumors swirled around her pleasure parties, which were said to be legendary affairs filled with wine, women, and song. The infamous orgies were held in the emperor's palace and were attended by some of the most powerful people in the empire, including members of the imperial family, senators, and high-ranking military officers. It was said that Poppaea hosted these parties in a private section of the Domus Transitoria, a luxurious palace complex near the Colosseum that was reserved for the emperor and his family. This part of the palace was supposedly soundproofed, so that the sounds of revelry couldn't be heard outside. The guests would arrive at the palace in disguise, avoiding the prying eyes of the public, and slipping inside through a secret entrance. Once inside, they would be met with a world of debauchery and excess. Wine flowed freely, mixing with perfume and incense to create a heady atmosphere of abandon. Food fit for a feast was laid out on golden platters, and the finest musicians played to entertain the revelers. But the main attraction of these parties was not the food, drink, or music, but the women. According to rumors, Poppaea had a particular fondness for beautiful young men and women, and she spared no expense in procuring them for her pleasure. She is said to have scoured the empire looking for the most beautiful people she could find, offering them money, power, or even marriage to secure their attendance at her parties. The guests were free to indulge their every desire with the women at the party, and it was said that many left feeling satisfied and exhilarated by the experience. However, not everyone was a fan of Poppaea's parties. Her brother-in-law, the emperor's uncle, was particularly critical of her behavior. He saw her as a bad influence on the young Nero, who he believed should be focusing on his duties as emperor rather than indulging in pleasure. Despite the criticism, Poppaea continued to throw her legendary parties, until her untimely death in 65 AD. The circumstances surrounding her death are unclear, but it is said that she died in a bizarre accident involving a pregnant belly and a heavy ball. Whether or not this is true, what is certain is that her death was a great loss to the partygoers of ancient Rome, who would never again experience the uninhibited pleasure that she had provided them. Julia Maesa was the mother of Julia Maesa and grandmother of both Elagabalus and Julia Maesa. While not an empress herself, her influence in the imperial court was significant, and she used her position to throw lavish parties and live a life of luxury. One such party was the famous Golden House Party, which has become a thing of legend in the annals of ancient Roman history. According to the accounts of Roman historians, the Golden House Party was an extravagant affair held in the Domus Aurea, the vast and opulent palace of the Emperor Nero. It was an exclusive event attended by the elite members of Roman society, including senators, generals, and wealthy businessmen. The guest list was carefully curated by Maesa, who wanted to ensure that only the most influential and powerful people in Rome were present at her party. The palace itself was a testament to the wealth and power of the Roman Empire. It was a sprawling complex with ornate gardens, fountains, and statues that depicted scenes from Roman mythology. The walls were decorated with frescoes that depicted everything from idyllic landscapes to scenes of Roman triumph. But the most impressive feature of the palace was the dining room. It was a huge hall with a vaulted ceiling that was decorated with gold leaf sculptures. The room was lit by hundreds of candles that were suspended from the ceiling, which gave the impression that the room itself was floating above the clouds. The party began with a grand procession led by Julia Maesa and her attendants. They entered the dining room to the sound of trumpets and drums and took their places at the head of the table. The rest of the guests followed, each one more important and influential than the last. Once seated, the festivities began. There was music and dancing, poetry and storytelling, and the flow of wine was endless. The food was served on golden plates and was fit for a king. There were exotic dishes from all over the empire, as well as delicacies from the local markets. It was a feast of epic proportions, and none of the guests could remember having seen such extravagance at any other dinner party. The party lasted 4 days, and it was said that the revelers did not sleep, but instead danced and drank until their feet could dance no more. There were also strange and unusual performances that were designed to shock and amaze the guests. Exotic dancers from the far reaches of the empire performed for the amusement of the crowd, and gladiators put on a display of combat that was both brutal and mesmerizing. It was an experience that none of the guests would ever forget. As the party drew to a close, the guests began to leave the palace, exhausted but exhilarated by the experience. They had witnessed a level of extravagance and debauchery that was unmatched anywhere else in the empire. and they knew that they had been a part of something truly special. While these rumors paint a picture of debauchery and excess, they also reveal a lot about Roman culture and society. The emphasis on beauty and youth, for example, reflects the Roman obsession with their appearance and the value they placed on being seen as attractive and desirable. Similarly, the inclusion of both men and women in these parties shows that Roman culture was much more open and accepting of homosexuality than our own. In fact, there are records of same-sex marriage in ancient Rome, and the first literary work to address lesbian relationships was written by a Roman philosopher. Furthermore, the rumors suggest that women in ancient Rome had more freedom and agency than their counterparts in other ancient societies. The ability to throw their own parties and invite guests of their own choosing suggests that women in ancient Rome had a certain amount of control over their own lives, which was not always the case in other civilizations. However, it's important to note that these sources are often biased and may not accurately reflect the reality of what went on at these parties. Much of what we know comes from the writings of Roman historians and gossip writers, who often had their own political agendas and were not afraid to slander their rivals. Additionally, the very nature of these parties makes it unlikely that we will ever know the full truth of what happened behind closed doors. It's as possible that these parties were more tame than the rumors suggest, and that the salacious stories are simply the result of propaganda or rumor. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the rumors about Papoya and Mace's parties continue to capture the imagination. Their stories have inspired countless works of art and literature and have become a staple of popular culture. Whether or not there is any truth to these rumors, they provide us with a fascinating glimpse into the culture and society of ancient Rome. By exploring these stories, we can learn more about the values, beliefs, and practices of one of the most influential civilizations in history and gain a deeper understanding of the complexities of human nature. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about the shocking secrets of ancient Rome, stay tuned for more updates. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to be the first to know when new videos are released. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.